chance to hear it, so let her tell it. People on the streets say Sabrina speaks. Tune into the show, she will let you know. Tell all your friends and family. Real talk is no joke. You get the news straight up from grassroots and concerns. You can hear some people gone. So tell all your friends to tune in to
Good evening, Cayman. I'm Sabrina Turner, and welcome to Sabrina Speaks, your daily dose of clarity, truth, and community insights. Every weekday from 5 to 6:30 p.m., we're tackling the issues that affect you, from national headlines to grassroots concerns. Whether you're in traffic or winding down your day, this is your chance to hear it straight and speak your truth. So buckle up, Cayman. We're not holding back.
This is the show. We gotta let you know. Now we got to go.
And now here's Sabrina.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sabrina Speaks. Yes, and good morning to our global family. It is good to be back with you today on Sabrina Speaks, the Voices of the Islands, Conversations for the World, the podcast where voices rise, stories unfold, and inspiration takes center stage. There we go. Those links are gone. I'm your host, Sabrina, and it's good to be back with you. It's hump day. It's Wednesday. It is the eve of American Thanksgiving. You may say, well, why the heck is she making such a hoo-ha over that? Because guess what? Plenty of y'all are going to be celebrating it tomorrow right here. I know what's going on. I see and I'm hearing all the conversations and all that sort of stuff. But Cayman Thanksgiving is coming up as well. But who cares? You want to celebrate it? That's up to you. Plenty of you are also flying off. But today in this episode, we got to keep it, I should say, within time because, you know, CMRTV.com now has regular scheduled programming. And there's another show, from what I understand, is scheduled to start at 7 o'clock. So we're just going to pretty much get right into it. But we're still going to do our housekeeping because you matter. Thank you for everyone who participated yesterday and joined in on the very topical discussion, as emotive as it was. It continued even offline with conversations that ensued afterwards. Again, it's a norm, it appears. But today I'm going to dive into, continue pretty much in a discussion, but most important, what is being spoken about, be it in this privacy of your own homes, but what's happening right now in regards to the whole immigration reform amendment validation, because you're hearing more about this clause 35. I'm going to break it down because you're going to hear about it quite a bit, and you've been seeing it on social media as well circulating. However, the bill in its entirety, I've never presented it here in this platform before, but again, the talks are being had and the requests have been coming. I'll do my best in just trying to break this down in a nonpartisan way, but to educate you based on your acts. But it has stirred some feelings, and I can see it from both sides. But many Caymanians are saying that even though they are feeling that this is the right direction, we are actually making a step in the right direction, they still feel somewhat unprotected in their own country. And they worry that the same permanent residency and the right to be Caymanian are being granted still too easily. They worry that even with the exemptions, some positions within the civil service being exempted, that it also, that blocks a lot of Caymanians from moving upward in their own public service. But my role, again, this evening, as I've continued to present myself here to you, is to not take sides. I'm here to share facts. I'm here to break it down as best as I can with your participation, highlight the concerns, and even Once time permits, explore the possible recommended solutions. That is really just staring in your face, that I've heard a number of callers to this program call in and have spoken about. So together, my aim is that we would look at this bill and really what it means and what Caymanians should be thinking about as we move forward. Not only that, again, what the so-called sellout clause is, I'll go into that as well, so you're not taken off guard. But the content you're about to hear, including any discussions or opinions from myself, my guest, and our participants, is intended solely for general informational and entertainment purposes. It's not a substitute for professional, legal, or medical or financial advice. And I encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for your specific concerns. Bridge Media Limited and all its affiliates disclaims all liability for any decisions or actions taken in reliance on the information presented. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe. We see you and thank you for all of you who do. And whether or not we love you visiting, we love your comments, it doesn't matter, but it is key. Before we go into that and birthday shout outs, we got another November birthday queen in celebrating their birthday today. Just let me get rid of the weather, let you know. Tonight's forecast calls for mostly clear, but becoming partly cloudy at times with 30% chance of showers. Temperatures will fall near the mid to upper 70s, and winds will be east to northeast 5 to 10 knots. Seas will be slight to moderate with wave heights of 2 to 4 feet. There was a high tide at 2:25 today, and there's a low tide for 9:29 this evening. Tomorrow, there'll be a high tide at 2:42 a.m. and a low tide at 8:30. Sunset this evening is for 5:44, and tomorrow, sunrise at 6:41 in the morning. The outlook is for a frontal system to become more stationary just west of the Cayman area on Friday. As a result, an increase in cloudiness and chance of some isolated showers will linger through the early weekend. So there you have it for your weekend plans, extended holiday or birthday anniversary celebrations. There you have it. Now, weather aligns with what I'm going to just bring to your attention. Compliments or thank you to the MRCU department. The Mosquito Research Control Unit has begun, or they will be beginning, aerial larviciding across the Cayman Islands. And right now, treatments are underway in Grand Cayman, and they will continue for the next 2 weeks. Now, after that, they will move to the sister islands, Cayman and Little Cayman, in early or mid-December. And, this year's heavy rainfall has made the mosquito control especially challenging. But larviciding helps stop these mosquitoes before they mature. And each female, can lay hundreds of eggs. So reducing this larvae now prevents future spikes. So that's what they're going to be doing. So residents may notice low-flying aircraft making several passes during the day. There's a reason for that. That's deliberate because that ensures that full coverage for making sure that should tides rise or we get any rainfall, that the eggs don't hatch, okay? So the products used are safe for both the environment and public health. Now, they have also cautioned that weather may cause some delays as well, but the team will keep working steadily to share updates as needed. And of course, as always, MRCU thanks you, the public, for your patience and support as this essential work continues. So if you see low-flying aircrafts, no, it's not dengue, no, it's not chikungunya in that area. No, they're trying to prevent any mosquito-borne viruses, but more so in the day when they're doing that, they're trying to make sure they larvicide the place so that these eggs don't hatch. So just in case you see that going on, thanks MRCU for keeping us up to date, and I will be sharing it here with you as well. Happy birthday, girl. Old C. Jackson, anybody know her? Help us in celebrating her birthday. Beautiful young lady has been with the Department of, does she work immigration? I'm from old school. She's working immigration. But yeah, good for you, my love. Happy birthday. I hope you had a wonderful day. You don't look 1 year older. So you're a queen, and I've posted your pictures, I think 2 pictures, 1 or 2 pictures of you on our Facebook page. And in our way of messaging, sending you here from all of the Sabrina Speaks family, happy birthday, Old C. Jackson. As we celebrate her, guess what? We also have to celebrate our Cayman Islands, because guess what? Just before coming live, I saw this. Guess what that means? Today, we're also celebrating, like just hours ago, and I'm going to try to break this down for you for what this means. We're celebrating right now, or we should be celebrating, a milestone that puts the Cayman Islands right at the center of global business and resilience. That picture, my dear friends, confirms that the Cayman Islands has been confirmed as the official Caribbean hub for the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council. You want to know what that means for us? It means that Cayman will be now host governments, investors, and private sectors partners from across the region. And together, they'll design and fund projects that are, climate resilient and bankable and built to last. Yeah, we are actually designated as the hub. So that's something to be celebrated. And for us here as Caymanians, this will open doors and new opportunities that will create jobs, training, and stronger infrastructure that, can withstand any challenges of our time. And it also gives our islands a louder voice in the Commonwealth business forums, ensuring that, the Caribbean is heard on a global stage. So that is what we're doing over there in the UK, and pretty much just breaking it down. This links what it actually does, this acronym CWEIC. It allows us to have links with over 56 member nations, similar to that of CARICOM, right? And like us, the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, India, UK, through trade investment ties, right? It's not for profit organization. It isn't a company chasing profits. It's a membership based on council. And it was set up back in 2014 to promote business cooperation. So that's what this means for us. And the reach that it has for the Cayman Islands, just being the hub for this, it is that it has over 140 strategic partners from 35 countries, including governments, banks, and private companies. So the whole mission and purpose behind this is that it will help business in the Commonwealth countries to find opportunities and sell goods. And it would also attracts investors and expand us into new markets. And it also is a bridge so that businesses, and I'm trying to be as layman as possible, can work with policymakers like our government leaders to unlock projects, and also aids in unlocking funding as well. Now, what this will do, and where there are going to be probably big forums and summits, and because of Cayman being the hub, that could present another positive return on stayover tourism as we're looking for, because what it does, it organizes events like Commonwealth business forums, as I alluded to, where leaders from all of these countries and investors meet to discuss deals and partnerships. So when you looked at what some of our elected officials were saying in the House of Parliament and their forecasting for 2026, this is another form of tourism. And because of the Cayman Islands now being a hub for this, this definitely puts us nicely postured to deal with all of these summits and all of that sort of stuff. And, for small island nations like us, it helps us really to design and fund projects that are pretty much not only for the resilient stuff, but for economical sustainability, because we suffer at that in any way. So yeah, this is what we're doing. Congratulations to the Honorable Minister. We go see there in the picture, Chief Officer Eric Bush. We got J.E. Banks, Honorable Ralston Anglin, and the Honorable Premier there. So we're looking for Caymanians to have some more opportunities like local entrepreneurs can connect with big investors because now they're going to be, that's a part of their role, and partners through this group, and projects, supported through this group are designed to be resilient. This is where we call stronger infrastructure. We're in big talks about the continuation of the East-West arterial and just wastewater management and all this sort of stuff. A part of this are that's what their remit as well, to design and be resilient against hurricanes and climate change, where we stand. So, and again, regional leadership. Cayman hosting this Caribbean hub in layman's terms, and in the most simplest consolidating what it is, means that our islands are seen as leaders in business and resilience across the region. So at the end of the day, it's like Cayman's new business gateway. That's what we are going to be looked at to the Commonwealth. And what it will be doing is opening doors for investment, jobs, and stronger communities. So there you go. This is somewhat tying into some of the statements that were made in Parliament through the Finance Committee. And when some of our leaders spoke, if you really have been following, you can hear how this now, and I guess until this was actually official, they couldn't say very much. So as we step into this role, congratulations. We all have to give them a round of applause. Let me see if I can find a little, here we go. Let's give our government a round of applause. Celebrate us as a jurisdiction, because as we step into this role, ladies and gentlemen, the questions, there will be questions, of course. How will you position yourself to take advantage of this noble role that we have been given as a hub? And what kind of resilience projects do you think will be built here, like homes, roads, energy, agriculture? Look here, for us being the hub, the possibilities are wide open, and it's how we use it. And we need to look at it from a perspective where Cayman is not just participating, right now in this chair, the hub, we're actually leading. The Cayman Islands is leading with this announcement, and that's something we should all be proud about. So yes, we should all be celebrating with them, and let's, make sure that this works out for us as we are actually moving forward as Caymanians, strong and proud. Yeah. Good evening, Connie Bonnie. How you doing? Damian Henry is with us in the house. Mr. Boy 2B6X. Hey, whoever that is. How are you? There's some codes here. I have no clue. Hey to you back. Bar back 18. How rich are Caymanians trying to get? Caymanians, this is the Commonwealth. We're the hub. And you know what? As long as it's going to bring us into line, and if you heard the explanation of where it puts us, I think we won't knock it yet. Let's see exactly. But how rich are we trying to get? We got to do what we got to do. The whole thing is not leave out the people. And that's why this conversation this evening is so topical, because despite the money being here, not everybody's feeling it. But you can say that almost with every other country, right? But no, we need to be more vocal. We need to celebrate our wins. We need to see where we have a group of people now that are aligning themselves accordingly and getting international recognition. And that's why we're going to do it. Once our people are inclusive and do not feel left out, we are going to do what we got to do. Cayman is a myth. You got a British flag behind you. Cayman is a myth. You got a British flag behind you. I know what I got behind me. You're entitled to your opinions. You're entitled to your opinion, okay? I know what flag I have behind me. Yes, we're a British Overseas Territory jurisdiction. Let's get into what the bill says about at the end of the day, I want to try and bring this across, and I welcome your feedback. 345-936-8255 is the number to call to join in the conversation if you have been following what's been going on. Now, you've also heard that there's a cause, there's a third cause in 35. I will actually go into that, but I want to try to be as simple as possible with what this bill is actually trying to say. And I'm just going to go straight to the core of the bill, because at the end of the day, we have heard commentary to say, persons are saying we need to protect Caymanians. We need to have legislation where, Caymanians' status is not so easily attained, that it needs to be longer, that we will have things in place where at the end of the day, persons can inhibit frivolous marriage. Sham marriages is what is being called. But let's just look at it in its entirety, because a lot of people are seeing it from a different perspective. And then I'm hearing with Cause 35 that's a grandfather's clause, that is what is now called the sellout clause. But let's just look at it in its totality, right? First of all, the bill does three things, first of all, okay, from what I've seen. And it has taken me a little while to put this all together. First and foremost, it definitely has made the step in a direction that tightens pathways to permanent residence and the right to acquire Caymanian status, be it more so from the naturalization section and on the grounds of naturalization, okay? And many Caymanians have argued for years that these statutes have been, or statuses have been granted too easily. And this bill is designed to raise the bar there, okay? Second of all, what I found in its totality is that it addresses exactly what Caymanians were calling for, exemptions, rollover into civil service. We've seen where that is actually agreed to, and it will happen. However, it doesn't come without some exemptions. And right now, certain posts we are seeing in certain industries in the government, like police officers, prison officers, the judiciary, the judicial sector, and even some of medical, the legal fraternity, there are some exemptions in there for certain key roles, and there are going to be other roles as well that would not be subject to the rollover rules. So again, here we go. That Caymanians have long felt that these exemptions, again, they were looking for this refreshing thing with the rollover, but then with these exemptions being carved out, that they will feel it will eventually still lead to some blocks of their upward mobility. Only time, my friends, will tell if that will be the case, okay? When we looked at the clause 35 that you have heard, that particular clause 35 deals with transitional fairness. I'm going to try to be as simple as possible, but let me give you an example. We know that there has been serious backlogs in applications within our immigration department, right? So if you've already submitted an immigration application, or let's say there's an immigration appeal or an appeal in general, before this new law takes effect, your case, your application will be dealt with under the current law that stands now. So it will be dealt with under the old rules, under the old legislation. And any new applications after that submits to immigration or appeals tribunal, wherever, will then be dealt with under the new law. So if your application is submitted on the day of commencement of the law or thereafter, it will then be dealt with under the new law. And this is where it's taken that view that is a sellout clause, because persons are saying how much are backlogged. They should be dealt with as long as a decision hasn't been made. They should be dealt with under the new law because a decision hasn't been made. So imagine this. You've applied for your permanent residence a year ago, 2 years ago, and this clause 35 that is there means in your case will still be judged under the old law and not the new one. And that's about fairness when you look at it from a national perspective and trying to be balanced. No one should have rules change on them mid-process is one way of looking at it, okay? Now, here's the tension that is arising, and this is why it's being labeled as the sellout clause, because you've heard it, that our very own nationals, Caymanians, want stronger protection, and they want it now. And this clause 35 means that those protections are then delayed until pending cases are cleared, so to speak, or it doesn't capture any of those applications that are already in the processing line because of whatever reason. It's only the new ones that are being submitted once the law comes in effect. And that's where the whole debate, some disgruntledness, but that's not all, has come about. So there are some, let's break it down, because there are some myths, but we're going to deal with both the myths and the facts, right? Some people think that this fixes, or they want to have this safety comfort that this bill instantly fix Caymanian protection. Well, pretty much, and what we have heard some commentary said by some callers to the show and in other forums, that it's not going to yield what Caymanians are looking for. That's a fact. Because what this bill, as read, and this is not being privy to the 15 changes that they say is going to be made. Nobody knows that. What this bill sets is the framework. That's what this bill has set out. The bill sets the framework, but the regulations, the detailed rules, which is what the regulations are not yet public. And until the public and Caymanians see them, the real impact will be unknown. It is unknown. So here we go again. You have heard the acts. Where is the regulations? It came up in the discussions yesterday. Where's the regulations? You've seen it. So that's a fact. There's another myth that could come out of this, is that pending applications will be judged. And I have just told you that's not the case because of the Section 35 clause, will be judged under the new law. The fact of the matter is, that's a no. Because of this very same clause, 35, makes it clear that they will be decided under the old law, under the old rules. And nationally, that's being looked at to ensure fairness. Now, you may say to yourself, Sabrina, shut up. Where's fairness to me, the Caymanian? This has to stop. I don't want to hear nothing about no fairness. We need to stop. We need to put a quota on all of these things. That's hogwash. Stick a pin, because I'll bring it to you from another perspective. The myth as well that civil service exemptions are gone. Really, I'm not going to say that that's the case. Not necessarily. And here's why. For what I take away from the bill is that the bill actually acknowledges the issue. But here we go again. We don't know yet if exemptions will further be narrowed. And that depends a lot on exactly how vocal we are. Certain things play out, that will be the key. Okay? Another myth could be perceived as democracy is fully served by this bill. Well, the fact is, the word democracy, transparency, but let's sticking it to democracy, requires that very same word, transparency. And that is what we're not seeing, because without published regulations that gives you time to look at both the substantive law and the action part of how the law is going to work, Caymanians cannot properly scrutinize how their rights and opportunities will be affected. So my ask would be for you to just think and pause a little bit on all that I've mulled over, even though it could be a bit inundating, a lot of information to process. How many of us have heard about what examples that I've just talked about in the community? You and they're hearing, they need to go. We need to stop this now. Yeah. But even some of these myths and facts that I've shared with you, how many may have repeated them without knowing the facts? You see what I'm saying? So we first need to look at transparency. And that transparent way of moving forward is grossly clouded because the regulations themselves are not yet published. Okay? And what that means for every Caymanian cannot fully evaluate the bill and how things are going to be implemented. Okay? Secondly, we come down to the word democracy. When you say about true democracy, that requires that everyone, no matter where you stand in the social sphere of this community, what really matters is that people understand not only the law and how it affects them, but without the regulations, they're being asked to just go with it and trust it without full clarity. And I have to call his name. Denny is making sense. Denny and others are making total sense when they say, where is the regulations? Where are the regulations? Without them, we're flying blind. And ladies and gentlemen, my friends, we are, okay? Again, I'm not here to take sides. I'm just here to break it down in simple terms. And this is something that's going to be debated in the next couple of weeks. We know what's happening with fees and all of that sort of stuff come January. Ain't no turning back from that reality. Okay? The third thing that I've noticed as well is the talk that civil servants, and we've heard some of the heart-wrenching stories that were shared yesterday on yesterday's episodes, that upward mobility. Let's talk about the civil service upward mobility or blocking or however you want to put it. When you look at these exemptions, should these exemptions remain just blanketed? And again, this was brought up yesterday. And if they're unchanged, Caymanians as a whole may still feel blocked. They may still feel that, what's the sense? I still can't move upward. And the big thing, the fourth element that I came across, which would only connect all of my previous conversations, right, is enforcement. Enforcement kept coming up as I prepared for this segment like you would not believe. And even with strong laws that a country has, these strong laws can fall short if they're not applied consistently. And that's where the enforcement arm will be held or have to actually pull this through. Because you can have all the laws in the world. If nobody is holding people accountable who are out there doing what they have to do to nab and capture offenders or those persons who are just doing things outside of law. But first of all, you got to be aware of it. Based on some of the conversations that we're having in our society, I can tell you what, they only need somebody to really make a formal complaint. And then you will see a pattern. But we're seeing and hearing that persons are fearful to speak, not only in the civil service, but also out here, because they know that their bread is totally hinged on their income. And you will have some very bad actors who are employing these people and who are extorting them, who are taking advantage of them. But at the end of the day, it still boils down to making that right, striking the balance in immigration reform, which is a part of this white paper and this legislation, that your Caymanians do not feel as though they own their own home, that they're not protected. And that is where the outcry is coming. That is where they're trying to get the balance. So not to say that at the end of the day, the grandfather's clause shouldn't be there, which is why I gave the analogy the way I did, because I want you to look at it from both sides of the coin. Okay. I know a lot of you can't comment because you're either going to expose yourself, you're going to, you're afraid of your job. I know it, which is why I'm here. I'm trying my best to paraphrase what have been coming to me and how you feel. And this is why this space is here. But fear alone cannot continue because silence is consent. Okay. Hi, Sonia. Good evening. I don't want to miss any of the comments. Good evening, Sabrina. Thank you very much. Big up to Carol. She did me some highlights. I was a little conscious. They're a little bright, but that's okay. It's the festive season and I'm living my best life. Miss Rose, I think you asked yesterday where I got the Santa Claus from. That Santa Claus is older than, what Siobhan would say, Methuselah. It got it from A.L. Thompson's many moons ago. Yeah. Hi, Darlene. How are you, my dear? Barbara G. Good to see you, my love. Good evening. Good evening, Marshall. Darlene, how are you? And your statement is, most of the time our own people are blocking their own people from climbing the corporate ladder. Well said. And that was articulated yesterday. I mentioned yesterday, Darlene, by a caller who called in and who witnessed it firsthand. And from what was said, that is obvious the case. And we have heard persons comment here that, you know, at the end of the day, they just don't feel as though they're able to speak, even in the civil service, because if you're not a part of a certain group or clique, then you are pretty much held down. And that's pretty sad, because when the question was posed, Darlene, a lot of those persons in there are our very own. And it's sad when you have a civil service like that, that I would really like to do you call it a SWOT analysis. If they could get in a very confidential space exactly some of the horror stories that might be shared, if they know that they wouldn't get in trouble. It would be interesting to get some true and honest feedback from them as to how they would feel. And because I'm getting privately that a lot of them are fearful of speaking. There are a lot of surveys that actually happen and they do not trust the surveys in a sense where they don't trust the fact that the surveys couldn't be linked to whoever is participating in the surveys, and that they're not What's the sense in participating in the service and surveys and being very honest in how you respond? Because they being the civil servants, are feeling that nothing happens, nothing gets done, and you're just pretty much wasting your time. That's as simple as I can put it. And some are frustrated. Of course, the participation is good because departments do get recognized for their high participation. But then it kind of makes you wonder about the quality of information that you're receiving. And maybe those who are not responding, or those departments that are not responding, then maybe there's something bigger afoot within those ministries or those departments for low participation. There may be things that are happening in those ministries and those departments that are so big that a survey will not capture it, and they just don't feel safe enough that they are able to speak for you to understand. So that is what is coming out of the forefront. Our people, Darlene says, must start having the mindset of the late Nelson Mandela. Are you saying that enforcement should be carried out by a select group of people? Whose job is it to police and do unannounced checks? That's come for the Department of Labor, DLP. Their officers are actually tasked. They have constable powers. The law, I had an earlier episode on the powers of those officers, and they can also do collaborative operations that includes the enforcement of CBC and WORC. They can do joint operations as well. But there is legislation in place that pretty much outlines exactly their rights. They could go on job sites and ask for payroll records, pension records, and all that sort of stuff. They have constabulary powers. Cruz, I'm just going to call you better last. Cruz, they do have constabulary powers. They have more than you can imagine. And they are considered the gatekeepers. But many times these operations could be joint if they may need police assistance as well. But since they've separated immigration, you got the WORC and you got the CBC arm, they could do joint operations to help with this, because like I said earlier on, you could have all the laws in the world. If they're not being enforced, if they're not being properly policed, if you're not being apprehending offenders, and you know that there are real stories out there, hoping that everyone will be professional enough and confidential enough that should there be an organized raid or raids plan that nobody is tipped off before, then you will really see a change here in the Cayman Islands. And based on earlier podcasts or episodes, those were some of the fares that they were not handled confidential. They didn't feel that it makes sense to go and report on bad behavior of employers, because one, you didn't see the results. Two, there was no accountability. Three, many times you were setting yourselves up with your employer, and most of the time they would threaten you to say, well, we have friends in the various government departments, and before you know it, they get back to work. Somebody has already blown the whistle that I've seen your staff here or there. So yes, they do have constabulary powers. Darlene says, I experience the bad treatment. Maybe nothing in government is kept confidential, because a lot of our mist of the persons that is said that people can vonify in chat too much and are the biggest blockers and bullies. Okay, so you are actually saying you're a victim of this bad treatment, Darlene, and you didn't feel that, at the end of the day, that confidentiality, that you were protected by just honestly just trying to sound the alarm of what you've been actually, and it's pretty sad. You use the term blockers and bullies, and we're hoping that as we modernize the civil service, as they have been funded of that $2 billion over this administration, that some of these things will actually implement, so that you wouldn't be having persons making statements of this, and that everybody would be made to feel as though they are important and that they will be handled with the most respect. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what? So is this what Denny means when he say enforcement? I just want to be clear. Yeah, that's a part of it. A part of it, yes. A part of it is exactly what Denny is saying. If no one is enforcing, and remember now, your elected arm is there to make the laws and the policies and regulations. The enforcement arm is the responsibility of the civil servants. That is the operational arm. You wouldn't expect for how the civil service is designed, the day-to-day operations of how staff is deployed, how they arrange all of these things. That's the day-to-day operations. No politician gets in that. The politician is responsible for going to Parliament, making sure that the government, the civil service, is funded, and they give them a set of marching orders. This is what we want to accomplish. Do what you got to do, and that's it. In order for these laws that the government right now, like this immigration reform, in order for this to give the Caymanians the results that they're looking for without saying, oh, you can't get married for 20 years, that's really not managing sham marriages. Sham marriages can be picked up long before you reach the eligibility for status of 20 years. If enforcements were doing their job, if people felt that when they had complaints about couples or they have their concerns and they would handle it delicately and they do an investigative unit, and just like how we've had Ms. Joy Basdeo on here talking about what due diligence is needed, the due diligence prior to the posting of the bans, while the bans are being posted. There's actually almost an entire wing to constantly be overseeing all of these. That could be an entire department. That, my friend, falls solely on the operational arm of your government, not the political arm, not your elected MPs. So the deliverables from this piece of legislation, let's say it's passed just as it is, and Caymanian says, yes, we're going to do this. Finally, we're making a step in the right direction. If the boards are not doing what they have to do based on this new reform, look at complaints that are come in, transfer the complaints then to the enforcement division, the enforcement section then go and they take it on as a case and actually investigate them. The boards can only make their decision in accordance to the law. And if something is flagged and the enforcement arm doesn't properly investigate using evidence, and sometimes these cases may go out for a long time, this is where the skilling up of the enforcement arm, them needing to know exactly these laws, these policies, these regulations is key. So should there be an investigative case that comes to them, they should be skilled up to know how to properly investigate, how to properly do a case file, how to link that within breach of the law. So when they send that through to the DPP's office for a ruling with their evidence and they're building this case, they can make a ruling that will pretty much back up a breach in the law that could ultimately be the turning point of a yes or a no decision from the board. Outside that being properly done and people getting the evidence, the boards and councils only have to say a yes or no based on the raw law. But a lot of the information that those boards and councils need, instead of just talking it under a mango tree or seeing them when they pass you, or if you go country and you're doing a little dance and you see a little move, but you know something is not right. Yeah. If the evidence is not there, the board cannot be responsible for how much they grant, because they can only approve, refuse, defer for further information, which could be a plethora of things based on the law. Outside of them doing that, they are in breach of the law. And of course, we can be sued. because people are applying in accordance the very same laws that we have. So the balance that is trying to be made here in the Cayman Islands, where immigration law is concerned, is a fair balance that protects your people and doesn't appear as though we're giving away our citizenship to every Joe Blow that comes and marry. There is a personal responsibility for every Caymanian, male and female as well, who pretty much enters a union or a marriage, civil partnership, for other reasons other than what it was intended for. It's that simple. You, every time you enter a relationship for that reason, other than what it was intended for, you are ultimately giving away status. The actual application is just a formality in solidifying that application. The decision to go before a marriage officer is born on those two individuals, not the politicians. So until we are able to make some good examples out of these people who are breaching this, that is causing this unfortunate situation that genuine people that are in real and legit marriages now may find themselves having to wait for 20 years because you were not able to enforce the law, because people remain silent. Why? Because they know enforcement is not upskilled enough to capture them, and they get away. So don't blame people for coming here and getting status, especially through marriage, and blame the foreigner. Every Caymanian is responsible for that. Every single Caymanian is responsible for that. You think putting it to 20 years is going to stop it? If you knew you entered it for other reasons, it's not going to stop it. And remember, now that non-Caymanians have to also, remember now with driver's license and licensing of motor vehicles, do you know what liability that is putting on that Caymanian spouse now? The wife, the Caymanian part. When the time comes now to go and license their husband's vehicle, because they're waiting on status and they got to wait now for 20 years. Every one of those Caymanian spouses now are going to be subjected to all of these fees. We didn't see that one coming, did we? Yeah. So stop blaming the immigration law. It is the two persons that stand before that officer that needs to be held accountable if you know you're entering it for business deals, for a mortgage, for medical insurance coverage. Stop blaming the law, because the law is not the problem. It's a two-prong approach. It's lack and poor enforcement of our laws. And every Caymanian who enters into a business for fronting or marry for other reasons other than the right reasons. Don't blame somebody who has reached 15 years and have gone through the PR process, have bought their house, have been in the community and did what they had to do. They followed the rule of the law of everything the application says, behaved themselves, whatever. Don't blame that person for doing and applying for something under the laws that we've created. Don't blame them. But now we are waking up. We are now waking up as a jurisdiction. But we also need to have the hard conversations with ourselves. Be it your Caymanian as of right, generational, however you want it, or status holder that makes you Caymanian. When I say Caymanian, it's anybody who, whether or not you were born here, generational or status holder. I'm calling you all one today. And the bad behavior, even as employers and fronting, you're selling out who we are as people. You can't blame one expat for you entering in it other than what it should be. And if we are going to go down and have the real conversations, This is the truth. You may not like what I have to say, but you can't say I'm not speaking the truth. Why should you penalize persons who have come here, made here their home, have behaved themselves, have met the threshold of being able to make their money stretch, buy a home, build a home, buy land, have done all that they have to do, raise their family, pay school fees for their children? The people didn't come here unless they were invited. By who? A Caymanian-owned business. And even some of those who come here to work in the hospitality industry, for example, they don't leave their heart where they're from. At some point, they're going to assimilate or mix with somebody, be it paper Caymanian or thing. What happens? Oh, I'm not going to fall in love with you because I have to be now married with you for 20 years. No, what I'm saying is that could be a legit relationship that is born on true love. And now you're being penalized. Penalized because of a number of bad actors and a lack thereof of enforcement. Darlene says, maybe a lot or most of the time, the enforcers are the problem. That's why things can't get better. Well, I know one thing. We can beat up ourselves. We can get on public forums as much as we want. We can change laws. We can go to the UK. We can do whatever we want. Our laws, regulations, and policies are useless if we do not have persons enforcing the very same law. Keith Orritt, the enforcement arm is the Ombudsman's office. And well, what we're talking about in the context, Keith, is based on a question that was posed earlier on. Yes, I got you. Okay, I got it now. I'm going to apply for that position. No skinning up around. Well, I'm hoping there was called for an entire department to do due diligence, similar to what I think they were doing in the UK to nab same sham marriages, similar to that of ICE, but more so with the discussion from Ms. Joy Basdio was doing the due diligence on this part. But I don't think it should just be limited to marriage. I think there's a bigger department that is needed to actually even deal with how some businesses, no matter whether you're a law firm, an accounting firm, or you are a mom and pop janitorial, landscaping, construction business, I feel we really need a big department that is just focused on being exactly what they are, enforcing, being gatekeepers of our jurisdiction. Yeah, a serious cleanup is needed. Who got the balls to do it? Well, at the end of the day, the civil service is controlled by the deputy governor and is action, of course, by a lot of the chief officers and department heads. And they sit down with their politicians or the ministers, and the ministers see exactly what they offer, what the ministries have to do. And once it's funded, they do the projections as to what they want to accomplish, be it in these next 2 years or for the entire 4 years, because we know not everything can happen clickety split. But when we're talking, bringing it back to this particular conversation, this immigration reform, like I said, will be diddly squat if it's not enforced. Simple as that. Anita Ebanks, sadly, enforcement of so many of our laws, regulations, and policies has been an ongoing problem for decades. Why? The various reasons need to be addressed as soon as possible. Anita, you are so right. And it comes back down again to the infamous word, the famous word of accountability and the lack thereof. So much persons have commented on this forum and have expressed how concerned, how frustrated they are when it comes to certain services and people just doing what they have to do. That you're quite right. The various reasons as to why these laws, regulations, policies that has been lacking for decades, that has been presenting themselves, and it needs to be addressed. So The only how that can work, and that's if we have the enforcement arm. And I'm hoping that through this platform, based on these discussions that we're having, as I continue to inform and educate and just present facts to you, that the enforcement sections of all of these departments will truly respect and honor their role, and that the powers that be within the departments will understand why they need to be adequately funded, so that you don't hear people ranting like what you're hearing right now, that we have to highlight some of these things. And it's an ongoing effort. And it's some of those things where it just looks petty, it's small. Those can balloon into huge problems at the end of the day. So here we go again with the immigration legislation that's about to be debated on the floor of Parliament in the next couple of days. Maybe some of you would be a little bit more comforted that if one of the solutions or recommendations that they could actually have that will probably calm your fears or your nervousness is that government could consider first publishing the regulations before the implementation, because it goes back to the word transparency again. That, my friends, is the key to democracy. We keep hearing this all along, and I don't think people understand the weight of democracy and what it means in certain contexts. And Caymanians, honestly, I'm going to say it. You, us, we deserve to see the fine print. So maybe first publish the regulations before implementation. That could be something. Another thing maybe they could consider as well is that they can possibly review the civil service, those exemptions that have been called out carefully. Because if certain posts remain under this exemption from this rollover for practical reasons, which we have heard it explained, but that doesn't say that we will not eventually have a good percentage of our Caymanians being able to come back home from university, from migrating back home. Let's say they had relocated for a few years and come back home with the necessary skills and international experience. But, that is a possibility as well. Maybe if we create an environment where we are more welcoming of our own coming back home to contribute to our society, we will see a change. But right now, a lot of people are more looking the opposite way of trying to see what jurisdiction they could possibly consider going in order to make a better life for themselves, because it is becoming more to some, unreachable to see themselves actually being able to live here and retire here, because they just feel like they're outnumbered. We are outnumbered. That's a fact. But the environment, protections, laws no longer protects them enough. Okay. What we need to remember is that pathway needs to be balanced in the civil service so that Caymanians are able then to progress into a lot of these leadership roles that they're seeing now appears to be unreachable. And one of the stories that was shared yesterday, there's somebody who's been in a government role for 17 years, and they have never received an incremental, like where they are on the pay scale for 17 years. They have just remained there. They've been committed to their job. And that struck a chord, that hit home. It's like they're trying to frustrate what story was shared. And I'm just trying to recall what was said, that, it is sad because that is their own Caymanian, that is there 17 years in the same department, in a role that has never, ever received an uplift based on performance. And they're of the view, the takeaway is that that person is just trying to be frustrated. Yeah. So it's pretty sad if that is not that I doubt, but of course, right now I'm only repeating the story, and I'm hearing 1-2 persons have actually confirmed that there are others. That may be just one story that made the headlines, but there are a number that are in the civil service that unfortunately have found themselves in that. Another thing possibly government could consider is stronger thresholds for permanent residency and Caymanian status, whether through, again, this is one of them that they said, but they're trying to push this 20 odd years for the marriage side of things because of the lack thereof of the enforcement arms, right? And then the points criteria can be reassessed. We don't know this. All of these stuff, my friends, will actually be in the regulations that nobody can actually have seen as civil society. And at the end of the day, they can also consider building accountability measures, which goes into one of the comments that I saw here. And regular public reporting on how many, for true facts now, how many applications are being granted. If my memory served me well, I think that was one of the concerns that Denny had as well. Really, do we even know how much applications are in the pipeline for PR and status on the grounds of marriage, on the grounds of naturalization, on the grounds of descent? Do we even know those true numbers? Has that been made public knowledge since you've gotten this new section where all of these people that are already in the pipeline are going to be grandfathered in? What is that number? What is that number? What does it look like? And you know, that's really how Caymanians, you can build back the trust in your people if that becomes a reality. So these are not partisan demands, to be honest with you, with some of the suggestions for government to possibly consider. They're actually all in line democratic safeguards. We use these words quite loosely, but for the context of building trust, being open, what I've suggested is democratic safeguards that can be considered, because it's really about fairness and transparency and, bottom line, accountability. Okay, that's really what it is. So for those of you just joining us, let's take a step back a little bit. And for those of you, thank you for sticking with me. Let's take a look at the bigger picture then of where we are. We're not the only one that's facing these challenges, by the way. And that doesn't mean that we should just roll over either, okay? We're feeling it that much more because of our sheer size. But our brothers and sisters in Bermuda, and this is what I found as well in comparison, they themselves had similar debates. Similar debates came up in Bermuda when immigration rules had appeared over there too lenient. And that then, my friends, had to balance, the government over there had to balance protecting the Bermudan identity and keeping essential services staff, which again, they may not have had the amount of Bermudans there, but they were able to still include their indigenous people, their Bermudans, but still had to keep essential services staff, which is where this exemption comes in. We also see in Barbados as well that when they introduced their immigration reform to tighten residency pathways, they did. They were introducing their immigration reforms quite similar, but they themselves faced backlash when transparency was lacking. It's like they were not, it didn't make sense to the people of Barbados, which is what I'm hearing from a lot of Caymanians here, in not so many words. But we tend to shoo-shoo in the background and only leave one or two or three persons to really carry the load, to bring up the conversations, and then you will say it on the sidelines. The big lesson, though, that is clear, what we all have unique with Bermuda and Barbados is that we're all small island nations. And we must be able to balance openness with protection when it comes to you people. And if you can't get that mixture, that formula right, you're going to have discord. And discord can be shown in many ways, different ways. Could be silent protests, could be boycotting, it could be in a number of ways. But another lesson is that we must be able to protect who we are as a people, which is all the Caymanian people are asking for. But at the end of the day, Caymanians have to be responsible too. If we want to protect our identity and still know that we need essential services are going to be understaffed or not staffed, if you just say, get out of here, that could be a problem as well. That's a balance. But transparency is key. And if we're not transparent with our people, or we risk losing public trust, that's not good. And what we're seeing from here is that accountability and transparency keeps coming up. And it's not an option. That's what it's going to come down to. It's not an option because you may have the numbers, you may have persons that pretty much support you. It is essential for every citizen of the Cayman Islands. Every citizen. I'm going to go back now to break down again for the sake of this, hoping that it'll take me then to the end of it. Again, 936-8255 is the number to call should you wish to participate in this conversation. And I'm hoping that your silence is because you're taking in all that I'm saying and that I'm making sense, okay? Let's address the infamous Clause 35 that I kind of went into as I delivered the entire immigration reform. But that's pretty much it. What we're looking at right now, saved by the fees, where that immigration white paper is focusing on the status, the PR, that section, and now the government making their revenue, we see the heightened fees. That's where it all comes in. But this first phase of what we're seeing in this bill is addressing pathways to status, pathways to PR, and then they just slapped on a whole heap of fees that's going to impact everyone, okay, at some point, directly or indirectly. But let's look at the sellout clause. And from the perspective of those, I'm going to try to deliver this the best I can by being fair and seeing it from both sides of the coin, okay? The sellout clause, as we know it, is there's a fair by using that term of loopholes, okay? There's also the risk of delay in protections, as we alluded to earlier on, and perception of just it's saying one thing, but doing something else, right? But at the end of the day, people are worried. Our people are worried about allowing pending applications to be judged under the old law. And the bill is effectively giving non-Caymanians an easier pathway to residence or Caymanian status, even though the new law is supposed to tighten the strings. This particular, now you can understand why it's being dubbed the sellout clause, okay? Some may say, I don't care what legal advice they get. I don't think it's right. If the people is asking for what they're asking for, I don't care if your application has been submitted. If you really want to follow the will of the people who've elected you to do just that, and everyone campaigned on immigration reform, who cares if a decision has not been made? Once the law goes in effect, as long as an application is pending, you should be judged under the new law. Again, that is from the perspective of those individuals who feel this is possibly a sellout clause. What is also being shown from that side of the coin is that some who see it this way may feel that the protections then are then further slowed down, because then you'd be dealing with two pieces of legislation, new applications and old applications, and you're dealing with two separate pieces of legislation that is pretty much being judged, being processed under two different headings. And that, my friends, may have Caymanians feeling that their protections promise is not being upheld. And that's where the perception of unfairness is coming in, because to them, it may look like the government is prioritizing outsiders again, because their applications were submitted when we're trying to stop some of them from getting PR, some of them from getting status in the time in which they're now eligible to apply under the current law, and not immediately applying the stricter rules. Okay, so that's from that perspective. And this, my friends, are some of the reasons why person may actually call it the sellout clause. And they see it as selling Caymanian short, and they're calling for every Caymanian to wake up and speak up if this is how you feel, because three voices alone publicly is not going to solve the problem. Okay, because if they don't wake up, Caymanians need to wake up. If they're sleeping or just remaining silent, their silence risk losing the ground of their own identity. Okay, let's look at it from the fairness aspect of stuff, of all of it, just being fair. Okay, the raw law in its context, 35, ensures that people, for the clarity of those persons who applied under the current law that's in effect now, are going to be decided on by the law that exists at the time of submission. So in this case, it would be the law that's in play right now, okay? And closing or changing how they're being critiqued, how they're being decided on by the boards or councils in the middle of their application being processed, or whilst their application is being processed, could be legally challenged as unfair or even unconstitutional. That's just the facts. And when it comes being stable, under stability, if it is changed under the new law, even though their application was submitted before, in the light of fairness, it actually prevents chaos, as I alluded to earlier on, within immigration system. And I just want you to put this picture into perspective. Imagine hundreds of applications, which we know there are a couple hundred of applications in there right now that is waiting for a decision to be made. Imagine hundreds of applications are suddenly being judged under a new criteria, under a new point system, under a new law. It would, in all honesty, create confusion, delays, and outright, ultimately, lawsuits. It is just that fair. It is just that simple. Plain and simple. And applicants at the time of submission would have acted in good faith under the law that was in effect at the time of their submission. And it just comes as a moral compass and principle that honoring their applications under the law that it was in effect at the time of submission, that builds credibility in our jurisdiction and our Cayman institutions. Here we are being looked at now as a hub for the Commonwealth. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if what some are advocating for, saying, no, if a decision has been made on an application, what kind of reflection does that give us for this new position that we are celebrated earlier on in the show? When you're looking even at the transitional management of things from the legal aspect of things, it is standard practice, legal practice, and that's internationally known, that there are transitional clauses that protect pending applications and cases whenever major reforms are introduced. I said that when I was breaking down status on the grounds of marriage and I think naturalization, because someone had asked me the question whether or not I felt that there would be a grandfather clause. And I said, based on standard practices, my time of being there, having dealt with immigration law for over 27 years, I would not have been surprised if the same practice would not actually happen. And what they did now is that they're actually putting it in law because that was a practice. They have solidified their reason for the grandfather's clause without saying it because it's now actually going to be embedded in the piece of primary law, the primary legislation. So on one hand, Caymanians see Clause 35 as a sellout because it keeps the old law in play, therefore making it easier for these applications to get through that are already in the processing line. You can't blame those applicants for the pace in which the boards are actually taking to give them a decision. That's no fault of the applicant, okay? And Caymanians will worry that this whole cause will undermine the very protection that the bill promises or what was promising them. But then, on the other hand, the cause is about fairness and legal stability, okay? Yeah, some may say, but here we go again, Sabrina, we're diluting who we are. Yeah, but you have to be fair. You have to be balanced. These are not just applications that are new. They are in there and no fault of their own doing that they haven't been able to receive a decision in a timely manner. This also, to be honest, ensures that people who applied under the old law aren't blindsided by these sudden changes because they would have adjusted their sales, they would have done everything in accordance to the law that was in effect on the date of submission, preparing up to that, up to the submission. And then they're blindsided. So really, it's a safeguard against chaos and unfortunate legal challenges. You can see how much money now government is out to pay. I saw an article because of how I think some search was happening, and I'm paraphrasing here, but that came to mind. With this cause, it saves us from multiple lawsuits if we do it, if we implement the new law on applications that are still being processed. If you think we won't be in a deficit, if everyone turns around and do a class action lawsuit or just sue, yeah, we could be borrowing a lot more money if that's the trajectory that we want to go. We don't need that. I'm going to be very honest with you. As hard of a pill as that is to swallow, we really don't need that. So, in all fairness, both perspectives have merit. I'm not shooting down one or the other. Both have merit. But the real issue is how long the transition lasts and how many applications, which we really don't know, are or will be or could be affected or not be affected because of this clause, and whether Caymanians will feel that the new protections are being delayed too much. Now, the delay is one thing, but unless the new applications, whenever this new law is enacted, if people are saying they're going to leave, there may not be that much new applications to be graded under this new system. But we still, with this cause, have to deal with those under the old law. It's not going to take that away if this is passed as it's written. And I've laid it out as neutral as I can, but balanced as well. So there has to be a middle ground somewhere. And the sellout view as it's being said or can be seen, yes, it protects Caymanians immediately. And of course, it stops loopholes, but it don't delay reforms. That's the sellout view. And when you're looking at it from a balance of being just fair, that's equivalent to respecting the rule of law. And it can also aid in avoiding chaos, honor good faith in applications. Yeah. So at the end of the day, if you feel that, it's not closing the door, it's not slowing it down, that you don't feel at the end of the day that even with the raise in fees that we have, that may not necessarily slow down the sham marriages or one's ability to acquire, let's say, British citizenship or all of that. People will save up for it. They will. I think what we need to be to just create this middle ground where everybody can be happy is to just be totally transparent. That would be my message to what I would send to my friends in high office. Just publish how many applications are pending under the old law or that would be pending under the old law so that every Caymanian know the scale of what's about to hit them. But it will also reveal that there are issues in the processes within WORC and the pace in which the boards and councils as well work at for whatever reason. Another thing they could look at is just a clear timeline. Set clear deadlines for clearing all pending cases and applications so that new projections will take effect fully, because maybe there may be something enshrined in law that gives a certain period of time, if it's not already there, but again, not being enforced, how long an application should take from submission to processing, saved by incompleteness. But that puts onus on every applicant, because then do we set the guidelines where, okay, if you want fast processing, make sure your application is not missing one item. Because if it comes in to be submitted and incomplete, we have rights to reject it, meaning not accept it if we go through the checklist and you don't have everything that completes your application. Another thing that our colleagues can do, my colleagues and friends could do, is probably implement safeguards. Prevent last-minute surges of applications by setting cutoff dates. Yeah, because now everybody's scampering either to renew their license, renew their cars, and I don't blame them, and submit applications for the fear of all of this. And then if you don't meet the PR threshold anyhow, or the marriage threshold, this law will hit you because you can't fast forward time if you're shy 3 years from applying for status under the current law, or 2 years or 6 weeks. You can't put it in advance, because the current law states that you're, in the case of you're applying, let's say, for status on the grounds of marriage, you had to have celebrated 7 years of marriage at the time of submission. So if you're 6 months shy, if you're a year shy, you can't submit it now because of this law that's going to come. You would have had to celebrate your anniversary or meet your eligibility anniversary in order to submit. So it's not like my driver's license is not up for renewal or to be renewed for the next 8 months. I can go now, once I have the money, and do a 3-year or a 5-year now, when they just collect my money and I walk up with a driver's license that's valid for the next 5 years, example. You can't do that with status. You can't do that with naturalization. You can't do that with PR, because at the day of submission, you have to have met that legal and ordinarily resident threshold. You have to have met that X amount of years of marriage in order to submit the actual application. And I think another thing that would make this easier digested by the public is that the public receives regular updates, be it from a department level, be it from a ministry level. I don't know. But for what we're seeing, regular updates on how many cases are decided under the old law versus the new law as well, if they're going to run parallel with each other. So at the end of the day, we heard persons who are saying, I feel that anyone who's applying for Caymanian status, similar to how you do marriage bans, that their faces and full names should be publicized, like how we used to do it in a local media, in a newspaper or on a website or something. That is a way, and you should have a timeline where you can actually comment or give feedback for reasons as to why you don't feel this person should be warranted for the grant in which they're applying for. Again, that goes then, and that points to the very same department we were talking about, due diligence. But this part now is due diligence by John Public. Yes. So at the end of the day, these are some of the things that are going to be considered. Without the regulations, we won't know if that is the case. We've seen what the law in its form, the bill, says, but we don't know what the 15 amendments that is going to be changed at committee stage, which again, if that is indeed the case, without in going public with what these 15 amendments are, you, the public, are again left in the blind, and you don't know what those changes are. But yet on the floor of Parliament, these changes are going to be made, and you're only going to be hearing about it unless they do town hall meetings between now and when they go to Parliament that the bill is tabled. You have been left in the dark. So some may ask, well then, what if this clause is removed? What if the outcry of this clause, what is the importance then of this? The implications, to be honest, I can pretty much go through if it doesn't exist of pending applications, is that there could be unfairness to applicants, judicial overload, and I'll break it down for you what that means, and just outright administrative chaos. There's also some serious social and political consequences that could come without this actual cause being in there. So I can understand why it was important for them to make mention or have something of this nature. Now, when we talk about the unfairness to the applicants, I think I ventilated that. I've given my reasons. Whether or not you want to stomach it, it is an actual fact. And I'll repeat it. It is no fault of the applicant that an application is taking 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in some cases. There's no fault of the applicant. And the unfairness to these applicants is that outright exactly what I said. If you applied under the old law and those rules then suddenly change and new requirements you have to face that they didn't know about, that automatically can put them on the back foot, that they were totally oblivious to and would not have had enough time to have possibly met the requirements of the new rules, right? And that could be challenged in a court as a violation of natural justice, which under immigration law, there is a section under the immigration for an appeal that if you could prove that you have been disenfranchised under natural justice, you can actually win your case and the refusal can be overturned. That's an unfairness to the applicant, okay? And then from the judicial overload, which again, people are entitled to judicial review if their application were refused, they weren't successful with, let's say, an immigration appeal, then your next step could be a judicial review. Yeah, but not only that, because of how it's in breach of or violation of the whole process, their rights and all this sort of stuff, separate and apart from immigration appeals, courts could actually be flooded with appeals through the courts, arguing that the very government who's trying to protect the people changed the rules mid-process. That's in their remit. That's in their right. And you could have a possible judicial overload because of that very same thing. Administratively, if the cause why these applications are not being processed in a timely manner because of lack thereof of processes, streamlining of work, incomplete application, those hardworking immigration officers and clerical persons, including status and PR board personnel, would have to reevaluate hundreds of pending cases under the new criteria, therefore further creating delays and confusions. Okay. Looking at it now without this cause, social and political consequences could come of it. Again, loss of trust, potential of instability of our very own immigration, and community tensions, which we're already feeling. But I have to bring it to you in its totality so that you can see it from all sides of the fence. The political consequences and social consequences, when it comes to loss of trust, is that the very same applicants, no fault of theirs, and the wider public might just feel that how these new laws could be implemented is either unreliable, that our government is unreliable, they're changing rules after people have already, because that's how they're going to look at, already invested time, money, and their expectations to align with the very same applications they've applied for. And the instability, the perception of instability, that could come about because our very own immigration system itself could take on the image, the characteristic to be seen internationally as unpredictable, and it could be discouraging for skilled professionals from applying. Again, I bring you back to what we celebrated earlier on. I'm bringing you back to our jurisdiction now being the Commonwealth. We're going to be a hub for it, right? And that perception is what we don't need. So here they are building us up, and we got to be careful with some of the decisions that we make, but also with a balance. Okay. Side note, Tartarian. Let's see what you said. It was in the UK news last week that the British are now a minority in their country at 35% of the population. The other percentage is mostly Indians, followed by the rest of the world. Tartarian, thank you for that data. I think I caused that myself, and I said, oh my God, that's no different than here. They're headed down the same path as us. And, at what cost? What are they going to do in order to, are they going to be listening to their people? And I feel this is the cry of our very people, because we still see in the ESO statistics that we are outnumbered in our own country. We feel it in the workplace. We feel it in getting loans. We feel it in how we even access rental apartments, getting our own properties. We're seeing it. We're feeling it. And we know our numbers. We know our numbers are just low. What are we going to do? And this is why it's this big race for immigration reform. But we have to deal with it balance, with dignity, but respecting how certain things are implemented and thrust could actually pose even more problems for us if it is not managed properly. And that's where the community tension that equals the social consequences, the rush, I think that's where it's coming down. The rush in order to get something needs to slow down, is where I think Denny was going, now that I've put it as best as I can in its totality, okay? Because the tensions that we're feeling, the heightened fees that we're seeing, it's all coming down on us one same time. And our Caymanians might feel welcome with the structured rules, but families and business relying on these pending applications. There may be a Caymanian-owned business that are like, yay, I'm now going to get out of those PR fees because you've been so dedicated to me. Now you're going to have status, da-da-da-da-da. But then it also comes a risk with that person going to be a competitor too. Look, I know we can go at this all day, but it doesn't take away from just being fair and balanced and just dealing with it logically. And we will not know, unfortunately, how this new legislation, it all depends on what get passed in the House, because we're all having this conversation before it's even tabled. This is why it was hard for me to really deliver this, because there's so much unknown. And I can hear Denny's now. This is why we need to see the regulations. This is why it needs to slow down. I know. And I'm hoping that the importance and the explanation that I've given, understanding the power of the regulations and what the regulations mean, that it only makes sense to see them side by side. See the law, see the regulations. And now we're hearing there are amendments that we're only going to be heard about when it's tabled. And I stand to be corrected unless there are some town hall meetings going on that I don't know about. If they're on other platforms explaining what these 15 changes are, I don't know. So I stand to be corrected. Okay. When you look at even a possible economic impact, these are all variables. These are all possibilities, right? There could be workforce disruptions, which in many cases, Caymanians would say, good, at least it gives us a chance to get a better paying job. Maybe I'll get the promotion now. We've already identified, based on statistics that were shared by our very elected government, that there's 1,400 persons that are unemployed. But yet we're going to still have 40-odd thousand and more and counting work permits in play come January of 2026. In order for us to be able to fill every one of those, we're saying we're going to need, let's round it off, 50,000 Caymanians to fill every role. And those Caymanians must have the requisite skill sets and experience to fill every role. Now, just think about that for a moment and point out which jurisdiction in the world. I would love to know that their percentage of their own people occupying every position in their country equates to, let's say, 80% of their own people, 90% of their own people occupying every role. Tell me, please, I would really like to know. Let's go 90%, because we realize we may not have someone holding the certain skill set for certain roles that are here. So just leave it at 10%. So let's go for 90%. But with these new laws, even though work permit fees have been increased and whatever, are we then going to say then that the filing fees, we're not going to deal with the work permits unless the filing fees, the differential is collected? What happens to those businesses and employers are waiting on work permits, or, like I said, residency decisions could face sudden rejections under tougher rules, therefore leaving critical gaps that we know we just do not have Caymanians enough to fill every role. It's just the fact. Darlene, our leaders know that they know what they're doing. They're just trying to make our people think they are for us. I know they're not fooling me. Thank you for that. Tartarian, why would it create a lawsuit? They came to Cayman to work, not to seek status. Workers chose to remain here. They could have left the island. Who promised them status like Christmas bonus? Our laws, Tartarian. The laws, Tartarian, gave them the right to apply for permanent residence once they met the threshold of being here for 9 years. They have the right to apply for permanent residence. That for them to get here or to reach that 9 years threshold to meet their eligibility, I'm just using permanent residence for right now, it could only get under two ways. approved work permits being renewed or change of employee, whatever the case may be, or by government contract. Okay? On the grounds of marriage or for status, we all know how that is. If you here and you fall in love with a Caymanian and yada, yada, yada. So it's our laws. It are laws that created them. Many people came here not, and you've heard the stories, not ever looking to be here, but for whatever reason, their contracts kept being renewed, their work permits kept being renewed, and before you know it, they became a part of our society, and they look at our immigration laws and says, well, there's nothing that stops me from applying. Why not? Okay, it says, I need to do this in the community. I need to walk a dog. I need to go and make sure I participate here. I need to sponsor a Caymanian. I need to go and read to them. I need to make sure that I have a minimum of 20,000 invested in a piece of land or developed real estate or a business that I'm a partner of where I can show I've invested a minimum of 20,000 of my money and get some references, which in this case for PR, references don't matter, but references to prove that I've been a part of training Caymanians. I have done with the prison ministry. I've been very active in the church. I've walked dogs. I have been a part of this. I've been, yeah, why not? The law is clear. So no, they may not have started off wanting to be here, but our laws allowed them that pathway to make a legal application. Good evening, caller. You're live on Sabrina Speaks. What's on your mind?
Good evening. Just listening to the conversation from yesterday, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with most of the things you're saying, but I guess wondering we gonna be playing this situation, this game forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we not gonna get out of it if we don't do what we gotta do, and it's an easy thing to do, you know. And what I would just talk about, just rebooting the button, just press the button to reboot,
Reset,
reboot the
go back to
situation.
default.
Yeah, reset it.
But
Like how you do a computer or something.
mm-hmm. But
the
you
train already left, and it's way ahead of the Caymanian people,
mm-hmm.
and we're not gonna catch it again.
Mm-hmm.
Notice how we gonna catch it if the train stopped and we run to catch it. That's notice how we gonna catch it. But
Mm-hmm.
what is suggesting? All this suggesting is more money to keep the game playing. You know, that's higher. It's higher stakes now in the game. That's all it is. You want to play at this table. You want to play at this poker table. It's higher stakes involved. That's all they do. In solutions there.
And you can see why they would need the stakes at the game be at the table being higher, because they need the liquid in order to make this country function, to operate this country. Otherwise, you're going to be borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, this is what we're not to know. So we can with the 40,000 permits now we get next year. Might be
No. That includes what is already at play, but it's going to increase even more. The demand is still going to be there.
You mean 40 altogether? You're talking about that?
So far, there's already in play. He estimates more than and counting. And counting.
That not including that including now the permits what we have.
Yes. It's going to increase.
So it's 40,000 permits
around there.
In the island.
Yeah, in that range.
Yeah. Okay. So the owners how that this game we could get a chance to play this game, and this game could be one for the Caymanian people if you stop and say, well, okay, we're gonna hold up for a year, for 2 years, and we're gonna make do with the workers we got.
But the demand is there. Their demand is there.
Mill, they could do the outlook and see what projects coming up and how many new permits you're gonna need.
And they did. Okay? And they did, caller. Sure
they did. Not gonna be nothing. It's not gonna be nothing special coming up that we don't have here now to keep the game rolling. Everything got stopped.
But sir, they did
for the next couple of.
They did. They pointed out that hotel across from Marin's Plaza, where HSBC used to be, that hotel is going to be completed. There's the Mandarin. There's another big development going on up at
Well, that not
Keys
gonna
Bay.
fall into next. That not gonna fall into next year. That's what I'm saying now.
And then you
So
got one
after
GT.
those-
One
after
GT
those
is about to
permits-
open. Who's going to be operating that? And what they're saying is we just don't have enough Caymanians to fill every one of those roles in all levels of their operation to say that we are not
But it
going to
got
have
come-
more.
We got to draw a line somewhere about, because if we keep building, we gonna keep on running into the same situation,
There
because we
you
never
go.
how.
There
So
you
the
go.
line has to be drawn. The Caymanian people who got business that need these people, they got to start what you call a contingency plan. That you got to train your own people. You got to train somebody to come up behind that one. That's just the way it got be. If you gonna be replacing them.
Mhm.
And Caymanians need to grow the population. So stop letting other people come here before the Caymanians and outnumber the Caymanians. That's the problem we got, because we can't fill the jobs, right?
Mhm.
So we might never be able to fill them. Like take United States, they got 9 million immigrants, so they can't fill all of the jobs either. But they're trying to do it because they know they can't continue on the situation where they're continuing on,
Mhm.
because the trade mill will keep on going and going and going. As long as we keep building, we're gonna keep on needing people and more people and more people. The island, how much more development can the island take? Sooner or later, if we don't want to stop, it can be a compulsory stop, one way or another.
But that's
Mother
a
God
national
stop us,
debate.
Mother
That's
Nature stop us, or
Hmm.
we come to our senses and say, well, this can't go on. You know,
That-
is the honest way.
That's going to be a national conversation, because you would have those, they're saying, like the financial sector brings in a lot of money for us. We're talking about building. That's the construction side. After these buildings are built, be it at a corporate office, be it a condominium, be it a hotel, you still need persons to work them, to operate them. So it's not just the
It's
building
the same
side.
thing.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, but it's still we train people to take over those positions. We train people to take over those positions and make sure that it works. We have somebody right alongside him, shadowing him. That's why we got those shadowing this one, shadowing that one. That when the permit is over, a Caymanian goes in there and promote the Caymanian. Don't fight against the Caymanian. The government itself can't fight against the Caymanian. Help the Caymanian up, uplift him in the position. You know, that's not how we gonna win this game. Otherwise, we'll be talking till the Almighty comes. You know, because is the way we keep going, there's no end. There's no end to capitalism. You know, there's no end to society being developed. So either way, you know, not only with the building, but like what you said with the continuous, to keep that trade mill, to keep that trade mill
Operational.
going. You know, yeah, exactly.
Well, do
So
you think that
if we
these
don't
developers,
draw the line somewhere about,
you think developers would actually be investing if they didn't see potential in our jurisdiction? You think people would invest that type of money to open up business, to relocate their corporate offices from all over the world because of the offerings and the safety that we have? The point that we're missing in this general conversation is that Caymanians are feeling that all of this is happening around us and we're not at the table. We're not feeling the positive results of all of that is happening, that is developing around us. And I think that is the biggest problem.
yeah, well, that's it. So how the owners how that we gonna get out of that is the things what you saying and other people say. We got to draw the line and say, well, all right, then we got how to stop. We got how to stop developing for a couple of years, stop granting permits for a couple of years, and let's see if Caymanians would get some of those opportunities. If there's not, okay, you got a couple of projects coming up now, so just let those projects be, and then if you need any more permits for any more projects that you don't grant no more permits, and then the developers will how to just say, well, we can't develop anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. Otherwise, grant more permits again for more workers, and when the buildings is finished, grant more workers again. So what the infrastructure, gonna handle, we need roads and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it gotta get that point where even the money that we collect, sooner or later, even the money gonna be taxed. You know? Sooner or later, that's the next move. You know, we one step away from being taxed. You know, we're being taxed now. You know, but the government not doing it. The companies are doing it now. This is what happened, and we're being taxed. It can be a tax on to us indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
The government not doing that. I don't know if anybody ever if people not notice that
Mm-hmm.
with this new budget, we're being taxed. You know? Yeah, it's a fee increase
Mm-hmm.
on everything. But the government not taxing us directly. They're doing what they're always doing,
Mm-hmm.
taxing us indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
So sooner or later, they're gonna get to a point where they're gonna start to tax us directly,
Mm-hmm.
because all these infrastructures and things that what we got now, they're not gonna hold up. They're not gonna hold up the population, the people what we got coming into the island. The now used to be a talk that they had 100,000 people. Yeah, who wanted those 100,000 people? It were the merchants, you know, the big time merchants that wanted those 100,000 people, you know, because they wanted to make more money. There wasn't selling enough. It wasn't enough money circulating for them to make the millions.
It was forecasted that at the pace, and I guess that was with having such foresight of what the developments were coming online, that the Cayman Islands was headed for a population of 100,000. Based on forecasting, and I guess they were able then to see what plans were in planning, what discussions were being had, and all that sort of stuff. But to say, oh yes, we have to grow the Cayman Islands to 100,000, no, that was based on what, in the grander scheme of things, that was seen. And here we are, somewhat maybe 10 years later, we are really getting there because the demand is there. Now, at what point? And
I know from
we got 3 minutes to go because there's another. Yeah, no, that's fine.
From time I was in school, I've been hearing that they go, oh, we need 75,000. Now we need 100,000.
That's people. Because they can see what's in the.
Are they 10-story buildings necessary? You know, all of that kind of stuff, and the people, you know, the people just don't have nothing to say, but we gonna keep on playing this game forever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to tell them, if
the power is in the people.
Better. You can't be in this situation forever if they don't stand up. Okay. Then.
All right, my love. Thank you so much for your feedback. Hi, Lavana. You are late for class. I'll give you a lie because I know you're on the mend. We were just looking at a consolidated format of the immigration amendment bill, and we went into the clause 35, what that means, that is now taking on the label of the sellout clause. And I was just delivering this topic in a nonpartisan way for information sharing. And of course, persons were welcome to have their feedback. So yes, and this is where we are, but there is another segment coming on immediately after me at 7. So I'm going to have to do a hard stop. As our older person says, this little island will soon sink with all this cement and steel. And let me tell you something, silent majority cannot remain silent. But I'm hoping that you had some takeaways from this, some sobering realities from the discussions that were ensued, and just bringing it all back together. This Immigration Transition Amendment Validation Bill of 2025, it really steps towards addressing our Caymanians' concerns. It tightens, as we've established today, pathways to residency and Caymanian status, and it also acknowledges that these civil servants exemptions that is putting into place. So it ensures fairness. That is the aim. And in transition, that's what we were doing here today. But it is not the full picture from what we're hearing by the discussion. The regulations will decide whether this is real change or a symbolic change. And as Caymanians, each one of us should stay engaged, and we have a right to demand clarity. We have a right to insist that the regulations are made public before any laws are implemented. And they use the word bureaucracy because true democracy isn't just about passing laws, you know. It's about ensuring that the people understand them and can scrutinize them as well and hold persons accountable. So At the end of the day, our future really depends on informed voices, not voice. And Caymanians must stay very vocal. And if you have lost your voice, you need to find it now. You also need to stay engaged and keep conversation alive. It has been my pleasure bringing you another episode of Sabrina Speaks. Yes, there's 7 o'clock on cmrtv.com. And I'm ready to be back with you tomorrow on Americans Thanksgiving. I don't know what we could be doing, but I ain't eating no turkey. But it has been my pleasure. Until next time, let's keep building a Cayman where fairness and transparency guides the way forward. Love you lots. Until tomorrow, have a good evening.
That's a wrap for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of the conversation. Remember, the dialogue doesn't stop here. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay empowered. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m., same time, same place, right here on CMR TV and radio, where your voice matters and your truth is heard. Until then, Cayman, take care of yourself and each other.
That's it for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks, where your voice matters, your story counts, and your truth is always welcome. Join us weekdays from 5 until 6:30 p.m. right here on CMR TV as we dive into the topics that matter most to you. Catch the show live or on demand at cmrtv.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram so you never miss a moment. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and always speak your truth.